as players, if there's something not driving you, then like my ambition's always been to play for South Africa.
Yeah.
So if that ambition hasn't been there, then I probably would have retired a long time ago. So for me, it's always been to try and play Test cricket for South Africa. Luck has its part to play, but at the end of the day, you've got to always be putting the runs on the board, and you've got to be outperforming your opposition. So I can look at it from one end of the spectrum where I'm like, okay, I was a bit unlucky. And then I look at it on the other edge of the sword and it's like, okay, well, these guys have scored maybe 100 or 200 or more hundreds than me. So that's an area where I need to improve so that I can be competing or making sure that my name's at the top of the list as opposed to number 2 or number 3 on the list. So, it's a bit of both, I would say.
New Zealand tour then. New Zealand tour. There's another opportunity.
There's a massive opportunity.
Hello and welcome yet again to the All Rounders podcast with myself, Pila Sande Sitava, and of course, the man that did the unthinkable in the Mzansi Super League.
But I thought we
got
rid of these intros, please. We spoke
literally
about
with his eyes closed. Mashanta Langa has nightmares of Nono Pongolo hitting him over the boundary for 6.
I remember the last time I hit 140 whilst my eyes were closed, right?
Nons, you good?
I'm all good, man. Yeah, what a weekend.
What a weekend.
You know, I always keep saying,
no.
Today I'm dressed in black for a reason. If no one has noticed, is Mnyamangengani.
All coming out of the curtains.
No.
All coming up behind the curtains.
No, what team are you supporting?
Let's get to our guest.
Okay.
Let's get to our guest.
We always do this. Chelsea, you won. Okay, let's leave it there.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives us great pleasure to welcome to the show our third ever guest on the All Rounders podcast. He's the DP World Lions captain, Dominic Hendricks. Your digital hands together. Dom, what's happening, bro?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's a long
Good
way
to
from
be
PE,
Well, this is home, bro.
This is home now.
Yeah. I've been here for more than half my life, so I can't really...
Okay.
Yeah, this is home.
No, but they miss you in PE.
Of course they do.
They miss you in PE. They haven't tried to get you to the Warriors.
Well, ironically, our current head coach, Russell Domingo, tried to sign me when I was 19 years old.
And then you said no.
And that didn't work out, yeah.
Dom got the coach to move.
Oh, okay.
That's
He got the coach to move
That's
this
exactly
side.
what he said. He said I had to come in to Joburg to come and work with you. So
No, fantastic. Great to have you on the show. There's plenty to cover. I mean, it's a domestic season that's going to be pretty much longer than it was last season, for good reasons as well, because it's good to have that amount of games in domestic cricket to play. It gives a chance to a lot of people to really hone their skills, but also try and make the step up into the various national levels. There's SAA, there's SA Emerging, there's the Proteas, there's so many things. There's SA20 for some players. But let's start here at home. How have the preparations been? And I know it's been a tough start to the season, but how were the preparations heading into the season? Of course, defending champions in the 50 over competition.
yeah, look, preparations were really, really good. Obviously, a couple of new faces around our environment. So we obviously got Russell Domingo in, and then Hashim Amla. So just getting used to how they operate was obviously some of the biggest things that we had to sort of take on board. And they were very observant, I would say, more than actually like imposing themselves on how we operate, because, like you say, we are defending champions. And then, didn't particularly start off too well. Got thrown down in a bit of a curveball down in Pietermaritzburg, where we got thumped pretty much. And then, not a good game again. Now the other night with the rain out against. What was it? The Dolphins in between that. So not a great start, but the preparations were fantastic. I mean, preparation's always been good up here. We do pride ourselves on how hard we work. But I would say if anything, we didn't work as smart as we have in the past couple of seasons. So just a little bit on the back foot to start the season, but nothing that can't be changed. I mean, we put 320 on the board the other day, which is a massive improvement on how the first couple of
Yeah.
games started.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
always
Yeah. Definitely.
so yeah, there were some positive things
Yeah.
from the other night against the Warriors. Also having a team 90 for 5.
Yeah.
Flipping hell, that dream start, but just couldn't close the game off. Hell of a knock from Patrick Kruger to win the game the other night.
Dom, you spoke about the new coaching staff. Russell Domingo, of course, he's been a national coach at various national teams here and in Bangladesh. Hashim Amla. The first time that you guys heard that Hashim Amla is going to be part of the coaching staff, what was the reaction from you guys as the players?
I think there were a few shell shock guys because
Is
it's
it?
just like jeepers. Okay, that's who is our batting coach. Like that's unreal. I think more excitement more than anything. Like I was hella excited to obviously start working with him because, I mean, the guy's record speaks for itself. He's
Yeah.
an absolute legend in South African cricket, especially on the batting front. Just to soak up as much as we could. And I mean, he's been phenomenal to work with. Not shy to put in the hours. I mean, we've been pretty demanding on him in that front, but always willing to help and always willing to be in the trenches with us, which is really, really important.
Dom, I mean, for me, I'm always trying to figure out before I move on to other things. I mean, off-season is probably one of the best and the worst periods for any player because it's probably 3-4 months of prep and it can be tedious at times doing the same thing. I mean, for you, you've been in the system now for probably over 10 years. Now, I mean, what does Dom look to add when it comes to the off-season before, I mean, obviously the part where you can get the score of the runs in front of the people?
So I think the big thing is obviously reflecting on the season before. So what were areas that needed improvement? Where was it really good? Where was it really bad? And sort of still honing in on those skills where I'm really good at, and then just adding a few more strings to the bow. So a couple of shots maybe I wasn't as confident as last year. I sort of did a lot of work on now in the winter. And then obviously the big thing about preseason and off-season training is just getting the body and the mind ready for the vigorous activity that the season does enjoy. I mean, quick turnaround times between games. Well, not now anyway. It's like once a week at the moment. But generally,
you only played 3 games?
Yeah, we played 3 games in the space of 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a game a week at the moment. So it's not too rigorous, as opposed to seasons gone by where we've played every second day. But when the 4-day stuff comes around, it's literally 2 weeks on, a week off, 2 weeks on, a week off. So it does get taxing on the body. So just making sure that the body's sort of prepped for that. And then, like I said, skills are always needing honing. I think a big thing I've learned from Ash now in these short tenure years so far is that even at international level, the guys put in hours and hours of batting every single day. I mean, you use the example, there was only literally one guy who could literally bat for 10, 20 minutes at a time, and it was AB de Villiers. I mean, everybody else were hours and hours in the nets. But it also just speaks to how good AB was, but also the intensity that he could bring in a 20, 30-minute practice versus the rest that were not as talented as him, but were hard grafting people.
You played in a lot of sides as well where we had a lot of senior players, if I may say, and most of the time those guys have kind of driven the culture, the team environment to what it was. And then if you're a young player at the time, you could kind of watch and learn that. You now are one of those guys who kind of drive that. How has that been in terms of you now as a captain, senior player, having to marshal a younger Lions side, most of them in their mid-20s, and kind of giving that guidance, like I always say to Peter, Lions is a different beast where you're constantly being asked to win all the time, and just
It's
getting them
always
used
the
to the cultures and the pressure of playing for the Lions.
So I'd say it's been a massive blessing, obviously, to be in a situation that I'm in, to have played for so long, and then to obviously be in a situation where I have the opportunity now to drive the culture. I would say the culture has pretty much driven itself over the past couple of years, where if you have good senior players around you, and testament to that, we've had pretty much predominantly the same squad for the past couple of years. We haven't really lost a hell of a lot of players. So from my personal point of view, it's not been a hell of a lot of work to do in terms of the culture, because the culture will always drive itself. I think the big thing is obviously new players coming in, just getting them up to speed with the culture. That's obviously the biggest thing, and just how we sort of operate on a day-to-day. But like you say, there's always guidance needed with a lot of younger players. I mean, our batting unit 2 games ago, guys were flipping, the egos were hurt real bad, and confidence was really shot. So I mean, what do you do from there? And then you sort of 2 nights ago, it's the complete opposite. So it's just making sure that getting guys their heads in the right place and making sure that you've put in the work. You've just now got to just execute that on the park. I think that's the biggest thing. So yeah, it's always a lot of heart-to-heart conversations that I've sort of had to have with a lot of guys, and I think that's probably one of my strong points, is that I get on well with a lot of players, especially the younger ones, that they sort of relate, or I sort of try to create an environment where my door's always open. If you want to have a coffee, if you want to have a chat, or if something's on your mind, please feel free to sort of ring me up if you're struggling with anything, so that we can help you. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't get the best out of guys if they're struggling with anything, if they've got problems at home, or even if it's just a confidence thing. We can find people to help you, and a lot of the time, once you actually speak about these things, you actually feel out of a lot better. I mean, it's happened to me on a number of occasions in seasons gone by where, you know, you're struggling with 1 or 2 things, and you just literally speak to someone about it, and jeepers, the weight of the world's off your shoulders all of a sudden. So
Do you think that's something that you've had to hone from a leadership point of view over the course of, like Nono says, being in environments where there were senior players that, like you say, that you could go and speak to and create that culture? Have you had to hone that yourself at a level where you have to have a winning mentality? There's constant pressure. That personal honing of your leadership skills, has it always been something that you've really focused on to one day, you know, sort of be in this position where you are leading a younger group of players in this franchise?
Yeah, look, it's something that's always constantly being worked at. I mean, yes, they say people are born leaders, but it's like you do get situations where you're like, jeepers, am I telling the guy the right thing? Am I giving the right advice? And it's sort of something I challenged a lot of, like our personal development officer. So it's basically people, so her name's MJ, and she literally does everything outside of cricket. So your studies, your welfare, like anything with regards to that. And I had a coffee with her actually after the season. I said, listen, it's concerning for me because obviously people are always going through things.
Yes.
And I sometimes do doubt myself whether I'm giving the right advice because I've got no professional experience to do counseling or anything like that. And I actually said to her, listen, is it possible if I could maybe just do a counseling course so that I'm confident in saying that, or confident that I'm doing the right things? Because a lot of stuff is actually not cricket related. Like cricket's a lot of the time an escape for a lot of players. And they bring basically a lot of their baggage, whether it be stuff they're going through at home or relationship wise or just confidence in general. And sort of that's a big thing, is how do you deal with that and understanding what players need and when they need it, because a lot of it is just emotional maturity. I mean, there's a lot of older guys or older players that you think they'll be emotionally mature, but they're as mature as a 13-year-old sometimes, and you're just like, okay, how do I deal with you versus a guy that's 5 years younger than you, but he's like 10 years more mature with you on that level. So that's been a big thing, sort of developing that. And I think a massive thing is a couple of books in front of me, and it springs to mind. Reading's a good way to learn from the best leaders. I mean, there's one right there, Alex Ferguson. I've actually read that book, funny enough, and it's
all Lions players already read this. You're a United fan as well.
I am, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, reading is a good way I've found also to learn from past leaders, because you literally get told the stories and the experiences of how their journeys went and how they sort of handled tough situations, and sort of it's like I said, it's something that's always under constant development.
Does it shock you? I mean, what you're saying is that, you know, some players use cricket as an escape. Does it shock you that it's supposed to be a professional environment? It's supposed to be something that, you know, players use to feed themselves, their families, but they come in and sometimes bring, you know, the stuff that they're going through personally into this professional environment. Does it shock you sometimes?
It's very, very concerning, considering that sort of in 2023, mental health is... It's not really frowned upon to say that you are going through, or to make yourself vulnerable and say, listen, I'm struggling with whatever I'm going through. But still, this day and age, there are people that are going through stuff and they won't really come out. And we've been phenomenal at the Lions. I mean, our CFO, he's a massive advocate for mental health awareness. I mean, he has a mental health awareness day sort of once a year. And we've got resources now available to us to actually sort of overcome these obstacles that we're going through. I mean, we've got a full-time psychologist, we have a sports psychologist. Whenever we want to go and see him, we can see him. But the alarming thing for me is that there's only a handful of guys using them, and the shocking part is that a lot of the guys are going through stuff, but they'll rather try and deal with it themselves. And I'm like, guys, come on.
There's resources.
I even said it last year. Last year, I needed to take I was suffering through a bit of burnout, and I just needed a bit of time off because, I just needed a bit of rest. And obviously, a couple of things sort of were burdened on me, and I didn't know what to do, and I needed a break. And I wasn't shy to say, listen, guys, if you need a break, you take your break. I mean, there's nothing to be embarrassed about with that. I mean, it's the reality of the sport. There's high pressure, and I mean, you top that off with anything that you're going through on top of that, and I mean, the pressures itself is really, really difficult to deal with. So
it's actually really helped. I mean, I'm going to try to think of a few examples here. I think Ben Stokes recently has done it. But I think especially in South Africa, Quentin de Kock is probably one of the few guys to kind of come out and kind of owned it. And coming out as South Africans, because we know the environment or the type of people that we are. As South Africans, we need to be tough. And sometimes that toughness, there's a lot that's been hidden behind that, where guys don't have to maybe open up and be vulnerable. Again, is it something that South Africans maybe we still have to go through? I'm talking from a cricketing or sporting environment where guys still like that bravado of showing how tough you are, whereas like now, as I think the world has gone to, is guys actually, you know what, I'm not handling this pressure.
I need a break.
I need a break. Do you feel like maybe it's slowly going there, or maybe there's still a lot of unlearning that still needs to happen within
I agree
South
with you.
African cricket space?
A few of us are going in that direction, which is good, but I don't think enough people have jumped on that train, if I could say that. So it's going to take a lot of, like you said, unlearning, and a bit more time for people to become more comfortable with that type of thing. So it's just going to take a bit of time more than anything. But I think the key thing is that there are, like at this union, there are resources like that available to you, so that, I mean, sometimes it does take you to reach rock bottom for you to realize I actually do need a bit of help. Because you do think, as a male, you do think, flip, I can deal with this myself. But I mean, at some point it does come to the fore where you're going to need the help. So as long as those resources are available, I mean, how does the saying go? You can take the horse to the water, but you can't make them drink it. So, I mean, that's like sort of the analogy for that.
Let's come back to the season then and how it started. I promise I won't be too harsh. When you look at it from the outside, I mean, we sit and we sit in the commentary box and try and look at what has possibly gone wrong and what's possibly gone right. In the Lions' point of view, Maritzburg was a bit of an anomaly because of how the conditions were. But after that, obviously the uncontrollables with the rain here against the Dolphins. But the previous game against the Warriors set a good target, but can't possibly sort of get to a place where you can defend it. When you look at the start that you guys have had, what can you pinpoint as something that you guys haven't really hit the nail on the head on at the beginning of the season that you'd like to see an improvement on as the games go on?
So I think first and foremost, we literally didn't start well. So we didn't start well at all. I mean, okay, the conditions were quite tricky to deal with, but identifying those, I mean, the same thing with the Western Province game. We were given basically a 4-day wicket, and we got blasted away by quick bowlers. I mean, it's not unknown for us. We've produced fast bowlers here in the past before. So I think just our cricketing awareness was a little bit slow. So we were always reacting to situations instead of saying, okay, it is what it is in front of us. I've just got to find a way to deal with it and be as effective as possible. I mean, the Western Province game, we were like 24/7. I mean, you got your number 9 walking in the 7th or 8th over of the game. I mean, that's unacceptable from a batting front. So just how slow we took to sort of get into the season and adapt to essentially what was in front of us was quite alarming. And it's something that we have brought to the forefront in terms of how we could be better at that. Because we've had multiple conversations, but obviously you can only talk so much. And then at a certain point, you've actually got to either make changes or you've just got to do, because I mean, it is an action sport.
When do you get to the point where you make changes then?
So funny enough, the first 2 games, I didn't do well at all. I got 2 ducks, and literally I had a week. I had a week till our next game, and I've made wholesale changes in my technique actually, because it was forced. It was forced to happen. I mean, it was either I carry on going the way I was going, and go through that rabbit hole, the bottomless pit where you just can't get out. You feel like everything's on top of you, or you say, "Listen, I'm open to change." And it was sort of hinted to us from Russell and from Hashim that, listen, there's like only a handful of players, like maybe the 1% of players in the world that stand dead still when they bat. I mean, if 99% of players have some sort of trigger movement, why are we not doing the same thing? And yeah, it took me the second dismissal to actually say, okay, listen, I've got to actually make some changes here. And I mean, look at the last game. I'm not saying I wouldn't have done that if I was still standing still, but there was a lot of work to be done from that. So yeah, there was changes to be made.
Yeah.
Dom, we saw yesterday, I mean, I'm just going to go out a little bit, or a couple of days ago, we saw Temba kind of change his technique and kind of made people ask, like, why would you do that, especially when you just recently had a fantastic series against Australia. And then now you're saying in a space of, let's say, 2 weeks, you change your team. How easy is that now for a modern cricketer to say, you know what, maybe there's been a pattern of dismissals, and you know, I'm just not going to let this continue going forward, and then put in the work to change it. How easy is that process, especially when we're really in competition?
So I think that the thing that makes it difficult is if you don't buy into it. So the big thing is if you buy in and you say, okay, you're my batting coach, or I need help here to make changes, and you buy into the process of how it's going to work, then it's relatively easy. But if you're a bit more stubborn and you don't want to buy into it, then obviously it's going to take longer to hit home, and you're going to keep making those mistakes until eventually it's forced upon you by yourself, essentially. But I think most modern cricketers are open to adapting. I mean, I was chatting to Vian Mulder sort of before the season started, and we were talking about technique, and he said that Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne, when they were playing county cricket, they were basically prepping for the Ashes. But the conditions didn't allow them to prep the way they wanted to. So they were doing like trying to get into the channel. But at county cricket, everybody bowls your front pad off basically. So they were out bowled LBW all the time because the bowling was completely different.
Some
but
dodgy decisions along the way.
100%, you know what it's like. But just the fact that they already had that in their minds that, okay, I've got 3 weeks to prep, so let me just get used to it, even though it was going to be to the detriment of them then. But we saw how well they sort of did during the Ashes. But I mean, most international cricketers, I mean, most cricket these days, you've got to be adaptable. I mean, if you play in Joburg and then you're going to play in Paul, the way you play is completely different because of the bounce and all that. So, I mean, with Temba making adjustments, yes, he did well in South Africa, but the wickets in India are not playing exactly the same. Very different conditions, so you have to be very adaptable. I think, again, like I said, the big thing is, are you willing to make those changes when need be? And then it's just about trying to find enough time to put the work in and then just back and execute those skills if you can.
Some people might not know, I mean, you've just mentioned an important point. Probably South Africa has got every ground you go to is so completely different to, and you coming from the Highveld, the 2 Highveld teams to, I mean, and then you're going down to the coast, you're going down to Paarl, Western Province to Boland, are 2 completely different wickets. So what does it take for a professional player in South African domestic cricket to be able to, is it a mental shift, or is it also part of a technical shift when you go from Highveld to the coast?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. So I think the biggest thing technically is, so if I can speak in terms of red ball cricket, is how you're most likely to be getting out. So on the Highveld with the bounce, you're most likely to be nicked off. So you basically want to try and cover that as best you can. I mean, more often than not, the ball's going over the stump, so LBW is not really a massive dismissal. And if you are, you say you find yourself unlucky because you back yourself to actually hit it. And then you go to the coast and there's not as much bounce, so it's completely different. But at the same time, you could go to Cape Town, and for the first 2 days, it's nick of city. So you've got to adapt to the conditions at the time to say, okay, this is the main mode of dismissal, and then later on in the game, it shifts the complete opposite way, where it's actually LBW and bowled. So it's a bit of mental and technical, but just making sure that obviously the work has been put in prior to that to make those adjustments. Because a big thing for me also when I do go to the coast is actually widening my base a bit, because of the lack of bounce.
Yeah.
So you want to make your center of gravity a bit lower.
Yeah.
And then when you come to the high felt, you obviously want to stand a little bit taller so you can ride the bounce a bit more. So that's just being aware of those things. And I mean, funny enough, had preseason in Durban, and we didn't actually have a net there before we played our 2 preseason games, like in Durban. And I got out the first game, and then I had a net before the second game, like for 20 minutes. And then it hit me. I was like, that's what you did wrong yesterday. Coast, you're standing too tall, like those sort of things. But sometimes you're just like a little bit off the pace in terms of that, and it just gives you a reminder. This game's very humbling because it'll say, listen, you need to catch a wake
quickly,
up here, very quickly.
And who drives that?
Yeah.
Is it driven by the coach or is it driven by the player? It helps, of course, if you've been through those experiences and you can 20 minutes and tap into that space. Actually, this is what I've been doing wrong. But for the younger players, is that something again a skipper, or is the batting coach who drives guys? Just be aware as we go into part of our prep this week. We're going to Durban. Let's be mindful of these issues.
Yeah, it's a bit of both, I would say. So it does get a lot driven by management because obviously they are very aware of how different the conditions are. But from time to time, it is the onus is on a lot of the senior players to actually just remind the guys, listen, conditions are very different, so don't be surprised if X, Y, and Z happens. And it's almost like you have to just throw it out there so that if guys carry on doing the same things that they were doing here, you just say, listen, we've told you already, you're not listening. You need to make those changes accordingly because obviously conditions are totally different. I mean, Telltale was that first game against the Tuskers. I mean, those conditions were like, we haven't played in years. I mean, I haven't played in like 5 years, I think. So to me, it was also like, jeepers, this place has changed a little bit. It doesn't look quite the same. The wicket doesn't, or the square doesn't quite look the same like it did a couple of years ago. So just making sure that we adapt quick enough to what's in front of us.
Ambitions, Dom. Ambitions of yourself personally, and of course, do you think that the domestic player now has ambitions of playing for the Proteas in all the formats? Because when you look at it from a modern day cricket point of view, a lot of guys really start wanting to play T20 cricket, mainly franchise cricket, mainly before they even think about playing for the national side. Now, has that sort of changed, or are the ambitions still the same from your point of view, but also from the general domestic player point of view? The landscape, has it changed in terms of its ambition to play for the Proteas and probably also play franchise cricket in between all of that?
Yeah, look, the landscape has changed massively. I mean, if you look at the international calendar at the moment, there's so little international cricket as opposed to every month there's some sort of T20 league around the world. I mean, I had a look at the fixtures for the next 12 months and I looked at the calendar just on T20 cricket and T10 cricket. I mean, you could literally, if you were good enough, you could literally jump around 11, 12 countries in the space of 12 months because of just how much cricket there is available. So I definitely think it's changed in that front. I can't really speak for most players because I don't obviously know what their ambitions are or sort of how they think. But for myself personally, it's always been to obviously play international cricket. I think these days, multi-format players, it's a little bit easier for batters because, it's obviously very taxing on bowlers. So I think it is going to definitely change over the coming years where guys are either going to play test cricket and maybe 50 over cricket, and you'll see a lot more of the older bowlers sort of go towards leagues sort of towards the end of the careers, because obviously it's such a short career span. I mean, if you think about it in the context of your life, you're playing cricket for maybe 20% of your whole life, so maxing out earnings, I can understand it from that point of view. You're trying to make as much money as you can while you still can, because you're essentially trying to set yourself up for after cricket. So I understand from both point of views, but the T20 cricket has changed the landscape completely. I mean, even with SA20, I mean, I look at the winter now, how many domestic players were playing overseas. Like Corbin Bosch literally played in like CPL. 3-4 leagues from July till all the way through till like October or
then
September.
Come back into a full season.
Come straight back into it. I mean, it's the narrative has definitely changed, but again, you've got to get your foot in the door there firstly, and how you do that is different for everybody. A lot of guys get their foot in the door via international cricket. yeah, it is quite challenging these days, I would say.
There's been opportunities, especially in the South African test side, over the last sort of 5 years or so. There's been a lot of change as well. I mean, you've been one of the more consistent batters in red ball cricket, specifically over the last sort of 5 or so seasons. Do you look at that and you say maybe slightly unlucky not to have made any of those touring sides over the last 5 years? And I know it's quite difficult because selection is never in your hands. But do you think, when you look at it in hindsight, do you think maybe I could have made maybe a New Zealand tour at a certain stage, or
There is a New Zealand
there's
tour.
a New Zealand, I was trying to go there, but in a subtle way. Do you think about that, Tom?
No, well, I think it would be, yeah, I definitely do think about it. I mean,
Yeah.
as players, if there's something not driving you, then yeah, like my ambition's always been to play for South Africa.
Yeah.
So if that ambition hasn't been there, then I probably would have retired a long time ago. So for me, it's always been to try and play Test cricket for South Africa. Yeah, luck has its place, its part to play, but at the end of the day, yeah, you've got to always be putting the runs on the board, and you've got to be outperforming your opposition. So I can look at it from one end of the spectrum where I'm like, okay, I was a bit unlucky.
Yeah.
And then I look at it on the other edge of the sword and it's like, okay, well, these guys have scored maybe 100 or 200 or more hundreds than me.
Yeah.
So that's an area where I need to improve so that I can be competing or making sure that my name's at the top of the list as opposed to number 2 or number 3 on the list. So, yeah, it's a bit of both, I would say.
New Zealand tour then. New
was
Zealand tour.
building you up,
There's another opportunity.
There's a massive opportunity. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to trying to put my name in the hat there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's 2 4-day games before that West Indies series.
Yes.
So it's all down to those first 2 4-day games. How well do I start? And is my name at the top of that list, basically? I mean, that's all it pretty much comes down to.
He did set you up nicely, Dom.
I did though. That was nice. So you,
I'm going to go back a little bit as well as we focus on, I mean, he mentioned franchise cricket there as something that's kind of dominated world cricket right now. And you just happen to be one of those players where people are going to be seeing you as a 4 test match player, 50 over cricket player. What has that meant to you now as a player to be in a landscape where there's been movement towards that, but at the same time, you trying to hone your skills and still being ambitious to play for the country and having periods where there's no cricket? I mean, in December, how has that type of cricketer now in South Africa dealt with all these stop-starts and having to be kind of still having that ambition, I guess, to still want to play for the country, even though it might be
limited opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's first and foremost, it's really disappointing to see how little Test cricket we're going to be playing over the next couple of years. I mean, we play now in December, we play January, and then I think we're only playing somewhere towards the end of the year. So really disappointing in how little Test cricket, especially during our summer period. But obviously the SA20 had to be slotted in somewhere, so it's sort of understandable. I think obviously the big thing is, we know it's going to be like that. Like, from my personal point of view, I know that it's going to be very stop-starty. So what can I do? I have to accept the fact that it is going to be stop-starty, but at the same time, I've got the end of December and the whole of January. So I've got like basically 5 weeks to stay on top of my skills and to constantly be working at it. I think the challenge then comes in is obviously with us playing here at the Wanderers, the facilities are not available. So like last year, we actually operated across the road here at the Wanderers Club for a good 3-4 weeks before the 4-day cricket started again. So the facilities might not be as good as they can be for what we need. But at the end of the day, you've just got to make the most of whatever facilities you do have and find a way to actually hone in on your skills. I mean, there's no excuse these days. If you get one opportunity, maybe one opportunity is all you get. Some people are lucky, they get 10, 15. Some people just get one. So it's, when you do get that opportunity, were you ready for it? No one really cares if you were training at Wanderers Club. It's like, you picked for South Africa now. You need to perform. You need to score 100 or take a 5 first. So, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
You are, I'm just going to give you powers here and say you are Enoch Nkwe, director of cricket. And you have the power to set up a South African season. what is that feature? Does that have more fixtures? Or what type of fixtures is that? And what type of a season is that? I mean, this year, probably for the first time, we started white ball cricket.
We started white ball cricket last year too.
Yeah, and in the past, it'd be like 4-day cricket first, build up to white ball cricket. This year, you know, it's like you said, it's like similar to last year, T20s in the past before. How would you set a South African season up, considering that, you know, it seems like it's heading towards more white ball, and the red ball cricketers might get left behind.
And timings, though.
Yeah, timings is vitally important. So, first and foremost, like we were having these discussions as the South African Cricket Association, and we had massive fights with CSA about it because, you know, they over the seasons gone by, they just announce things, but then they forget, oh, there's contracting windows, there's this. So from their point of view, I think it's a big thing for us to just have a little bit of a say. So we've never said that we're not available for talks. They just almost decide things and then discuss it afterwards. And we're like, but this is the 15th draft. How are we only getting in on this now in like the middle of August and the season's starting in 2 weeks? So that's been a big thing that we've been trying to push, just to get in on these conversations a little bit earlier, so we can understand what they are thinking, and then vice versa, they can understand from a player's point of view. Because I mean, the first thing that they actually said was, obviously the season's going to be structured around when the Proteas are playing. So a build up to a T20 World Cup. There's going to be T20 cricket at the end of the season, so that it gives guys extra opportunities to throw their name in the hat for that. So understandable why that sort of has happened, that T20 cricket's finishing that way. My personal point of view, you always got to start off with 4-day cricket because number one, bowling loads need to get high, so that bowlers don't get injured. I mean, there's going to be quite a few injuries, oh, God forbid, but generally injuries are more prone to happen with high intensity cricket when you start off with high intensity cricket up front, because obviously you've gone 3-4 months of playing no cricket, and now you have to go at full tilt at 100 miles an hour. So for me, it's always been 4-day cricket, even if it's just 2 fixtures, because it gets number one guys time on the feet, the body gets used to the load, bowlers get time out in the middle, batters get time out in the middle, and then you can always jump into white ball cricket, whatever format it's going to be, T20.
It's easy as well for players to kind of, once you've got that foundation in place, 100%. To step up into other skills or the intensity of having to play 100%, T20 or 50 over match.
Personally, I've always played my best cricket when I've had a lot of 4-day cricket, and ironically, over the past 2 weeks, like we said about those technical changes I made earlier, I've actually had to go and say, okay, like tomorrow as an example, I mean, we're playing on Saturday, so I already said to Ash, I want to do a 4-day session tomorrow because it's just going to give me no pressure of wanting to score. I can just bat and then figure out the technical kind of stuff. But yeah, again, 4-day cricket has to be the foundation, and then just obviously there's always going to be test cricket now by the looks of things in like November, December. So you'd ideally want to have 2 or 3 round robin games before that, so you can give your Proteas an opportunity for that. Then you've also got to look at it from the A side point of view. When are A side fixtures coming into the equation? So like in this occasion, there's going to be November or mid-November, there's going to be A side cricket. So it's kind of okay, we want to give our players the best opportunity for that. And then sort of the season can unfold like that. So the best seasons I've been involved with, I think it was like 2015. We had, and it was still 10 games of cricket in every format, but we played 5 4-day games to start, or 4 4-day games to start. We then played half the One Day Cup in October, November. We then jumped back into 4-day cricket for another 2 fixtures.
Christmas time,
we played the T20s. January, played the T20s. Then finished off the 4-day competition, and then finished the season with the One Day Cup. So ideal world, there's nothing wrong with jumping in between formats. Unfortunately, with the current or the amount of fixtures that we have, with it being 7, it's kind of almost easy to say, okay, let's get one competition out the way, like the One Day Cup now. But if there are more games in the future, so like there are 14 T20 games this year, you can sort of split those competitions up. So if there are, as an example, 10 One Day Cup games and 10 4-day games next year, you can easily split it up into 3 phases over the landscape of the season, so that it doesn't feel so like long and drawn out. Because I mean, the irony is we started a month earlier this year, and we're finishing 6 weeks later than we did last season. And to me, that makes no sense, because already, like, I looked at the Tuskers. I spoke to them after our game. They played their first game and they had 14 days off before they played their next game. And it's, to me, that's
momentum
like
gone.
There's no momentum, but it's also just so much time wasted. I mean, why can't teams be playing at least twice a week? You can play on a Wednesday, and you can play on a Friday or a Sunday,
Yes.
and then you can schedule it that this competition could have been over in 3 weeks,
Yeah.
very, very easily,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
even 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Double rounds, I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
Much needed.
Even if it's, I mean, I think 40 cricket and 50 over cricket, I mean, we're playing enough T20 as it is.
Yeah.
And if we're right now looking to develop franchise players, upcoming cricketers, it's probably going to come from those two formats.
100%.
And even if it's divided into two sides where the interior sides might play each other twice,
Yeah.
at least it gets you to 10 compared to just 7. Your thoughts on maybe a little bit more fixtures? And also that allows you to play also in different conditions,
Yes.
which is also part of the development process.
100%. I mean, you look at 4-day cricket, and you're playing a team once, so you play them this year in your own conditions, and then next year you play them in theirs. Whereas in the past, you're going to be playing them, so you can cash
Home
in on
and
the
away,
one side,
yeah.
and then like away, you're like, okay, it might be a bit harder, but
Yeah.
it teaches you those skills, like we spoke about, to being able to adjust to the different conditions throughout the course of the season. So I definitely think we definitely need to get to a place where even if it's a minimum of 10 games,
Yes.
and maybe one year you're going to play a team twice, and another year you're not. I mean, I don't see teams having an issue with that, but there's always been a drive for more cricket. I mean, 7 4-day games, it's not enough to, like, you have 2 or 3 bad games, and then cheapers, you
Yeah.
suddenly
That's
look
it.
up and half your
Yeah.
season's done. You're like, oh my word, my ambitions
That's
for the
it.
season are gone.
Yeah.
So it's sort of put us under a little bit more pressure because, you feel like there's no time. You feel like
Yeah.
there's no time.
Especially considering, I mean, high fault, summer rains.
Yeah. You get
Durban, it always rains. So there's few games in the season that you know already will be interrupted
Yeah.
or
Well, look
abandoned
at this,
straight
look
away.
At this, Look at this campaign so far. I mean,
Yeah.
the Dolphins, they played 1 game, and then they've had 3 rainout games.
Yeah.
I mean, they're sitting like 2nd or 3rd on the table, but I mean, they've
Had
played
no
no
cricket.
cricket at all.
Yeah.
They've absolutely played no cricket at all. So for sort of the flow of the season too, like momentum, it's really, really difficult. But I mean, county cricket does that, where you play, there's 14 teams like in the white ball stuff, so split it up, but everybody's playing 10 or 12 games. And then you say like the top 4 go through to play in the semis or whatever the case is, because that's also a massive thing. I mean, we've always had the stigma about knockout cricket in South
I
Africa,
was
Yeah.
about to go there,
and
Dom.
the irony is you play 7 games and then there's a final.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you get good at playing in a knockout competition or playing under pressure
Yeah.
when you're not experiencing that at the level below?
Yeah.
Now you must go to a World Cup, and it's your first World Cup, and you're playing the semi-final against England.
Don't
former
know
world
that
champions.
pressure.
And there's even more pressure now because you've got millions of people watching you in India and around the world, and you've got the hopes of South Africa and our past lying on you. So I mean,
Yeah.
my opinion, it's a no-brainer, even if it's not necessarily semi-finals, but you have like 1 goes straight to the final, and then you got 4 plays
Qualifiers.
3, and
Yeah.
then 3 gets another opportunity to
Yeah.
play 2 or something like
Yeah,
that.
there's that
Yeah,
IPL
knockout-
format.
knockout
that's,
format,
which
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you then think it's a good thing to have a 4-day cup final? I mean, last season it wasn't, but the previous season I think there was a 4-day cup
Dolphins,
final.
Dolphins,
Dolphins,
Titans.
Titans,
Yeah.
that was a couple of years ago.
And
Yeah.
televised as
and
well.
televised as well. Does that help, like, garner interest from players, but also from a spectator point of view, to know that, you know, you're going to toil for the X amount of games in a season, and then get to a place where you can actually fight and be crowned a worthy champion, to say?
No, I agree. A final is much needed in 4-day cricket, and I believe it's actually going to be a 5-day final this year.
Yeah.
So ironically, last year we played the Dolphins in Potch, our last game of the season.
Yeah.
Also, that's a topic for another day. How we play a home game in Potchefstroom. But anyway, we play them, and I think we ended up bowling first.
Yeah.
We bowled first, so they batted first. So I don't know. The game went. They scored 250. We then batted, and I think we needed to get to a certain score before like the certain amount of time.
Yes.
And they needed to take like
One
a certain
wicket.
number of
Yeah.
wickets. And literally they got the 7th wicket, and the whole team on the field was just celebrating, like doing flipping high five. Everybody's running to each other, and we're like, what the hell's going
What's going
on?
on? Yeah.
They won the competition. And then we're like, okay, this is strange, because
Yeah.
this is like 2.5 days into a 4-day game,
Yeah.
and these guys are flipping like celebrating.
Yeah.
And it's understandable, because that's how the format has been
worked, yeah.
developed. And then you fast forward like 2 hours later, and they are playing T20 cricket. Like, guys are hitting balls straight up in the air.
One.
We massively burgled. Like, it was the a burglary of the century how we managed to win that game, because we were in no position to win it. They had like a 100-run lead. We bowled them out for like, I'd say 180. We needed to chase 280 or 270 in the last innings, but they were mentally checked out because they'd already won the competition. And it was like the weirdest thing, because I'm like, this is a good side and we have no right to win that game because the conditions weren't, it wasn't an absolute road, it was quite tricky, but they were potentially like slightly mentally checked out already because of how the sort of the format was, or how the competition was structured.
You spoke about your strong at formats, obviously the red ball stuff and the 50 over stuff. Do you feel sometimes over the course of your career that you've been boxed as only that kind of a player where you can play only 4-day cricket and 50 over cricket, and not a lot in the T20 space where there are a hell of a lot more of opportunities, not from only from a playing point of view, but also from a financial point of view? Do you feel like being boxed, and I know Temba's gone through the same thing in terms of his career and his trajectory, Hash as well, boxing a player, you know, I mean, you've probably fall into that category of a 100%. Box player.
Yeah, 100%. So if I look at my development in my early 20s, so I come back from a World Cup and I've just been playing white ball cricket, and now I go into just playing 4-day cricket. Like I literally, before I left for the World Cup, I made my list a day before the second team. I come back and now I get told, no, you're only playing red ball cricket. So to me it was like, why? Like, I've done well in this format. Like, give me the opportunity to just get more development. And there's no reason why I can't play both formats, unfortunately. So yeah, I almost felt like in my early 20s I got left behind a little bit, just because I didn't get as many opportunities at second team level, let alone for the Lions. And it only took me, I was 25 before I played a full season of white ball cricket, 50 over cricket for the Lions. So it was almost like I was stunted, my growth was stunted in terms of that, because the focus was just primarily on how you're going to get better at red ball cricket. But ironically, the best players in the world, they can shift between all three formats seamlessly. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, but hopefully the narrative will change in the future where we don't box players into that category. We give them fair opportunity, and if their skill level is not up to scratch, back to the drawing board for them. And you can always relook at it in the future, but at least give them the opportunity first before you write them off in a certain competition.
Is it then a case of the player going to management, coaches, even senior management to say, look, I want to be able to put myself in a position where I can play all three formats, help me get there. This is where I think my game is. This is where I think my game should be going. How can you guys help me, and how can I show the willingness, the appetite to actually improve on all of those skills?
Before we answer, Dom, can I just enter a little bit? That also is going to be difficult with one-year contracts. I want to be honest. Because probably more than 50% of the squad out of 16, most of them will be on one-year contracts. So as a coach, I've officially given you a one-year contract. But how am I planning for Dom's T20 career if I'm also giving him 1 year? So there's another talking point in itself there. But I just wanted to also lay that foundation as a background of also the issues that are also there for domestic cricket.
Look, I wish I was a little bit stronger when I was younger. To be able to go to the coach and say, listen, this is like you say, this is where I see myself. I feel like I'm being put in this category, but I know I've got the skills if you just give me the opportunity to develop them. So I wish I had those conversations when I was a little bit younger. I sort of matured a bit later to have those conversations with coaches. So yeah, I can say I'm myself to blame for not actually just bringing that point up. But then there are a few players like Temba who at a young age said, listen, I see myself playing X, Y, and Z formats. Can you give me the opportunity to develop? And he got those opportunities. So yeah, it is tricky because obviously opportunities are also very limited. I mean, you've got a squad of 16 to 20. You can only pick 11 players at a time. So yes, we can train as much as we want to, but when are you actually going to have the chance to actually see if your skill set has changed and developed enough for you to have a sustainable future in that particular format? So yeah, it is a little bit tricky. I see it on both sides, but like I said, I think the narrative has definitely got to change about boxing players into certain categories,
especially with less fixtures as well. Where you literally, if once you get yourself in that starting lineup, it's really like a seriously poor performances that gets you out because
Bowlers are, you always need
it's-
bowlers, so bowlers are
Yeah.
changing, but batters, I mean,
yeah.
you just need one good game and then you picked for another
Yes.
few,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yes. Just continuing that the subject, South Africa at times where a minus, I'm going to say Kevin Peterson, some of the names where you can go to another country doing one. Stephen Smith was a leg spinner that batted. Kevin Peterson off spinner that minus also, and kind of transform their careers to be world class batters, right? And we've had the likes of yourself, fantastic under 19 World Cup. Your peers in that World Cup, your Kane Williamson, Joss Butler, Stokes, Joe Root, and you were a leading run scorer of that competition. And sitting here right now, in your early 30s, you haven't played for the country. What does that mean about our system in terms of making sure that we upskill the guys to so that they get to a point where they're representing the country? Because the guys that you played with have been recognized names for their countries. Is that something from our processes that is currently not in place? How can we get that right? That a guy, Kagiso Rabada, he played under 19 World Cup, he won the World Cup, he's playing for the country. Markram were part of that. And yet, the few more that haven't really got that opportunity, what's gone wrong, or what can we do better to make sure that more of those players get to play for the country?
Yeah, it's a question I've actually thought about a lot over the years. I think the big thing is just, obviously, a lot of the other countries, they fast track those players very quickly.
Yeah.
So they see like a Joe Root, he played under 19 cricket, he played a
Straight
couple of county games, and then they're like, okay, this guy's good enough, straight through. So those sort of systems allow for a lot of players where you just have one good season, you can be in. I mean, I had this conversation with I think someone like Adam Lyth, who's also like in his 30s, he had an unbelievable season, straight into the England Lions, and he's putting his name in the contention for Test cricket in the next season. So us just being a bit more adaptable to those kind of things, I think there have been a few cases of that happening. So if you take, for example, now, like you said, KG Rabada, but he still
Quinny.
played a whole season.
Yeah.
Quinny still played a whole
Yes.
season.
Yeah.
You see it now happening with the likes of Dewald Brevis, where opportunities are being given to those players, because you can see they are so much better than most domestic players. So it is understandable. But again, if I look at it from my point of view, I got back from that World Cup and I played second team cricket. Didn't do too badly there, but it took me a full 2 seasons before I actually played a full season of franchise cricket. I only played, I think, 4 first team games in my first 2 seasons at the Lions. So there was obviously a bit of a blockage, if I could say that, where opportunities were very, very limited. So I sort of got picked in the dead rubber games at the end of the season where we were out of the competition. And then, I mean, the other players were like your Kane Williamsons and those guys. They were straight to A-side cricket and then straight to international cricket from that, obviously based on the back of their performances.
Is it also a coaching thing, Dom? Because, I mean, those guys, obviously, you say that they show the potential of actually being, really good players and quality players in the future for their respective countries. But how much does coaching play a big role in that, in making sure that you upskill the player? You've got a Dom Hendricks who's done really well at an under 19 World Cup. How can I further develop that player so that not only for the franchise side, but also for the national side, is going to be an asset in the future, near future, and obviously in the latter stages of it. So the coaching development also plays a big role in that, in terms of, working with a guy like Dom, working with a guy like, I don't know, a lot of other guys that have done well at an under 19 level, but haven't really kicked on into international scene. So coaching, massive part of it as well.
Definitely plays its part. It definitely does. If I look at it, when I got back from the under-19 World Cup, Dave Nosworthy was the coach, and he had his favorite players. Obviously, I was a younger one coming through, but he had players that he'd brought in from. So he brought in Johnny Van Dier from Durban, and he obviously had to back him for his 2 seasons or 3 seasons, however long he's contracted for, because he brought in there based on what he saw in the guy. So obviously, my opportunities were were more limited, a lot more limited, as opposed to the opportunities that he got. So coaching definitely has a spot to play, because I mean, I could be liked by this coach, but not by the next
Yeah.
one that comes in or the one that was there before. So it's tricky. It's tricky as a player because you always want to be given the opportunity to do your best and to be able to upskill yourself. But obviously, sometimes you're not at the top of the pecking order, so the amount of attention that you get in terms of your development sometimes is very limited. But at the same time, as a player, you can obviously, like I said, ask those questions. How can I get better, or can I get a bit more time? And I wish I actually was a bit stronger, like I said earlier, to have those, I could say, a bit harder conversations with the relevant people, just to make sure that I was developing at the same rate as a lot of my peers around me.
Yeah.
Actually, I had a really nice chat with, I think, Kruger van Wyk regarding New Zealand about it. And I said, what are they doing right? Because there's like 6 million people. They just seem to get their small pool of players, but their development happens. I mean, to see a Ravindra in the first game of the World Cup against the former champions step it up, a guy that most of us hadn't maybe thought could be that good in an international level, really showing his potential. And he said one thing. He said at district level in New Zealand or franchise level in South Africa, the coaches report to New Zealand cricket. They don't report to a
their
board,
franchises,
their franchise board. So that means as a coach, I don't have the pressures of my board to say I must win a trophy. Their job at district level is to produce players for New Zealand. And so that means now with Dom, I can say, Dom, this is our plan, because I'm not being pressurized to say, let's go and win this competition. Is for me, to me, yes, of course, if you win, it's great, but like that is not your priority as a coach at that level. So I think that's also something that I thought New Zealand are doing really well to get that. Speaking of New Zealand, there's a mate of yours.
It's gonna always
Good
come
friend
back.
of mine.
There's a
Good
mate
friend
of
of mine.
very close mates of yours played. I mean, he batted 3, you opened. Sometimes it was 3 and 4. And I mean, I'm sure you must have been so happy seeing
Of course, yeah.
Conway, Dave Conway, do really well in the World Cup right now for New Zealand.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, funny enough, I made a bet with him when we were like 22, 23 at the time.
Yeah.
I said, by the time you said you're going to be playing international cricket, and he laughed at me and he said, you're talking the most rubbish ever. Yes, you can take my money. Yeah, you go. And he just needed a bit of change, I guess.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we had this conversation plenty of times. His technique hasn't changed at all.
Nope.
It's still the same technique, but
Yeah.
just confidence and backing. And you've seen this guy transcend into, I mean, he's a world-class player right now. I mean, IPL winner, doing well in the opening game of the World Cup. You can see he can play, and I mean, he's a good 3-format cricketer. I mean, just speaks volume for what we've actually missed here, unfortunately.
Environment also, I think, I mean, it speaks about environment and actually getting that kind of backing. And differences, and I know you probably haven't experienced a lot of the other environments, you're only being at the Lions, but how important is having a conducive enough environment that fosters success, backing from not only the coaches but also from senior management to say these guys are the guys that are going to carry us for the next 5-6 years, but also underneath that, these are the guys that we're also trying to get into the mix, so that
Upskill.
potentially if we lose a Dom Hendricks to the Warriors, go to the Warriors. If we lose a Dom Hendricks to the Warriors, we've got a guy coming up and he can seamlessly fill that role as well. Environments, how important are environments?
No, very, very important. I mean, you always want to have an environment where players can thrive and they can just be themselves. I think that's the big thing. You get a lot of younger players coming in and they feel like, number one, they're very shy because they're too scared to be themselves, or they're always trying to prove a point.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing that we always say to guys, like, you have nothing to prove to us. We have given you a contract or selected you for a reason. Just go and be yourself. I mean, that's the first and foremost. We are not going to get the best out of you as an example by you trying to play like me. I want you to be the best version of yourself. And for the team to do well, I need the best version of you. I don't need you trying to play like me as an example. It's also been a big conversation I've thought of, because obviously I'm not going to play cricket forever. We always look into the future. I think we've been blessed that we've always got a lot of batters coming through our systems over here. So the challenge, I guess, is to give them enough time. I mean, we have squad practices and we have like 20 odd people there. So it's like, how do you take care of everybody, knowing that on Saturday we're playing a game in Paul? There's only 6 batters that can get picked, but then there's another 4 batters on standby that are all actually good enough to filter in. Yeah. But how do we give them enough time? And it's a massive chat I've actually had with Russell, because he's like, yo, I feel like we spread thin here because we don't have enough resources to deal with these guys. So sort of just, he's sort of said, we've got to do it. It's the right thing to do, but it's just how do we structure it to give the guys the time. So he did it last week actually, where the day before, so Thursday, we came to practice and it was an optional practice for the playing guys, but it was a compulsory practice for all the guys on the fringes. Yeah. So all the rest of the squad players all had 2 hours of training, as opposed to just maybe 20 minutes in the nets. So essentially it's just finding that balance, but again, we're always looking to the future. So you've got your likes of Ryan, definitely an international cricketer. Yeah. I see the same thing for Josh Richards. I see the same thing for Mitchell van Buren. So these are young players that we are seeing can take the lines forward over the next couple of years, but also can transcend if performances and opportunities present themselves for them to play in the national colours. And then there are guys on the sides or on the fringes that are just as good as those guys. Obviously, just the opportunities are limited. So I take a guy like Connor Estes, who's an unbelievable player. I mean, gets 50 on debut to win us a game against the Dolphins 2 seasons ago, and played a massive role in getting us to the final. But he can't crack a game at the moment just because of the dynamics of the team. So those are the sort of players we've also got to really take care of to keep them here, number one. And then when the opportunities do present themselves, we give them an opportunity to play, just to see how they've developed.
A quick one before you go, Nons. You speak about dynamics of a team. There are certain targets that are placed by Cricket South Africa on franchises, and for a large part of it, it's a good thing because it's trying to make sure that there's enough of a good representation of what South Africa should look like in our cricketing system. As players, how do you react to that? How do you say, okay, we're taking this thing in the most positive light that we can possibly have, because it's a big talking point where, a guy's left out, he's good enough, but the color of his skin doesn't allow him to get into a side.
No, it's
wrong dynamic.
So wrong dynamic. Yeah. No, it's obviously difficult because essentially we have no control of it. Yeah. So we've just got to accept it for how it is. I mean, that's the guidelines or not the guidelines, the targets that have been set by powers that be. Yeah. And unfortunately, if we don't do, or if we don't abide to those, there are repercussions from our side. Yes. And unfortunately for some good players, it's one of the challenges that they have to deal with. I mean, a guy like Connor Estes, and he's good enough to be batting in our top 5, batting at 4, 5 or 6, but can't crack a game right now because the dynamic doesn't allow that. So it is unfortunate. Hopefully in the not too distant future we can get to a place where we don't have to have these limitations or targets of how many players can be playing, because whether you're black, white, colored, Indian, if you're good enough, you'll be playing. Yeah. And hopefully I'll see that in my lifetime with cricket in South Africa, because there are so many talented black, white, colored Indian players. Like, I think we've actually gone a little bit past that now, where we don't have to set these benchmarks. I mean, at the Lions, while Nono was playing, and even before him, we used to pick 3 white guys because our black, African, and our colored players and our Indian players were just strong, as good as them. So there was no need for us to have these targets. So that's how I sort of feel.
It is always driven by coaches for me. And if, like Dom says, pick more because you think they're guys that are good enough, and if coaches are limiting themselves in terms of I can only pick, then the targets are there because it enforces you to do so. Yes. And and if coaches are going beyond just seeing a person from particular color or
not skill,
and that's where it starts. And if we have more of that, where I just happen to pick 9 players of color and I don't have an issue with it, so I think that's where it needs to be driven a lot more. Dom, I'm going to ask you to pick probably individual or three or team, some of your best memories being here at DP World Lions? They are our sponsor or partner.
Shout out DP World
Shout
Lions.
out
Yeah, shout out.
to the marketing team. We know you guys. I mean, you've won. You guys are holding champions of the One Day Cup 3 in a row. You've won 4-day cricket, and of course, Lions have won T20. What are some of your standout moments, personally, or as a team?
So personally, I would say obviously the first thing would be obviously making my debut. I mean, no one really ever forgets their debut playing for a team. That was in like 2011 or 2011 I think. I didn't have a great game. I think I scored like 30, but I felt like I belonged first and foremost. And then it's obviously hard to look past our first 4-day campaign that we won after many years. So that was 14, 15 if I'm not mistaken.
Is that the Hardus Morris? That's
KG,
proper bowling attack.
So it's hard to look past that because I mean the cricket that we played in that campaign was just phenomenal. I mean, we had an unbelievable bowling attack, and at any stage could any one of those guys, number one, blow guys' heads off, and number two, take a fifer. And then
competition as well amongst them.
So much healthy competition. And then you had the likes, just Neil Mackenzie. That was ironically also his last season. So 200 on his last game at the Wanderers. I remember playing that one. But just like guys scoring runs left, right, and centre. And then I fast forward a couple of years. And then winning the One Day Cup down in Cape Town at Newlands. That competition was also phenomenal because we had Alviro score like 5,000 runs and just bully everybody. And then a couple of games he didn't perform, and some of the younger players like myself stepped up. Dev, Rasi, we all had our part to play.
He scored a 90 in a semi-final against the Warriors.
Of the year, and then, obviously winning that 4-day competition. I mean, it's very difficult to look past that where we won it with like an over and a half to spare.
Botch.
I saw everyone just running across the tempo.
We didn't know what to do. We just ran to each other and grabbed each other.
Jonty was going berserk.
He was thinking about the bonus.
That was possibly one of the best games of cricket I've played in because like
there was rain.
There was a bit of everything going on, and then literally comes down to the last 2 overs, and Tim was looking at all the senior players like, okay, who's going to bowl these? And we happened to give it to Vian Libber to bowl the second last over, and he just somehow gets us a wicket, and we go.
This guy's a dirty left-armers.
He's a right armer.
Libber is. I thought you were saying Bjorn is dirty left-arm. I was like, what's this guy?
So it was hard to look past that because I mean, just also the celebrations. I mean, there was so much emotions building up to that point, and it was almost like we've actually done it. We've actually done it now again. And then just. Obviously, last year's final was phenomenal. What a great game of cricket. And then hard to look past also 2 years ago. I mean, with the bat, we didn't have the best campaign at all. We were under massive pressure because the bowlers were performing week in, week out, and we didn't quite feel like we were at the same skill level as them. And then to go down and chase 330 in the final.
Riza and Bjorn.
Just to go and win us the game there, the bat drop, the famous bat drop. I mean, very difficult to look past that. So those are a couple of my favorite memories being here.
And one low you might say you've had in your 13 years now, I think, of professional cricket. There's been a couple. I mean, obviously you want to play every game that you can. So there are obviously a couple of seasons where just the runs didn't quite transcend as to how I'd planned it, and the prep was obviously good, but gone through a couple of ruts. I mean, look at the past 3 games. I mean, didn't do too well at all. So just not ideal, but then there's light at the end of the tunnel, like this past weekend where got some runs. But obviously very challenging because we were playing in a highly competitive environment with like some serious players around us and just not producing the goods. I think that's obviously one of the biggest things. We had like a serious wealth of international and domestic cricketers, and not being able to compete for trophies. I mean, we're coming like fourth, fifth most competitions. So to me, that was possibly some of the most frustrating parts, that
on paper you look at our team and you're like, cheapers, this is like
Should
a
be winning.
serious side, and we go out in the field and cheapers, it's a different ball game completely.
Yeah. Talk about some of the guys that have come in now into this Lions environment. I know Delano's been here before. Getting him back. Ngaba Peter, exciting leg spinner, comes from the border region. Who else is new?
Ndwandwa,
Tsepo,
you've got
Mureki, Zubi.
Zubaya. In fact, speak about Zubi first, and then the other guys in terms of their contributions so far. And I know the results won't always paint a great picture, but their contributions towards this Lions side at the moment. So
I'm looking really forward to how the rest of the season is going to pan out, especially the four-day competition. So someone said it the other day. I think it was on commentary during the during the game. So I sort of was just going over the game just to look at some technical stuff, and I was listening to the commentary, and then someone said, "Oh, these two at the crease, Dom Hendricks and Zubaya Hamza, if the Lions are going to do well this season, especially in the four-day stuff, they're going to have to score a lot of the runs." And I don't think they're wrong. I think Zubi is a serious player. He's scored tons and tons of runs over his career thus far, and just to have someone with that sort of experience that knows how to score massive hundreds and has played international cricket too, and I've got no doubt that he's obviously made the change because number one, he needs to be pushed a little bit, and then also he wants to score runs so that he can put his name in that for South African cricket again. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the One Day Cup, because I'm sure he'll stand up at some point or have a good score at some point during the campaign. But also in four-day cricket, I think he's a phenomenal four-day cricketer, and I'm looking forward to sort of what he has to offer and what goods he can produce throughout the season.
Yeah. And the other guys?
So very, very excited about Ngaba Peter. He's done I hadn't met him before our first preseason practice. And then sort of bowls there, and I'm like, cheapers, this guy reminds me a lot of like Rashid Khan.
Just
how
fast arm
very
action.
Fast arm action, and just how quickly he bowls. So exciting talent. But obviously talent can only get you so far. So we've obviously been pushing him in the direction to just get a lot of hard work done, because there's a couple of technical things he needed to work on. So we've been driving that massively with him, hoping that obviously the growth can develop, or he can develop as a player. But very exciting T20 player. I think he'll do really well in the T20 format. And then naturally, as his confidence and his skill level grows, you can filter a bit more into 50 over cricket. And then just a couple of other exciting talents who signed, like Junaid Dawood, also a serious leg spinner. Unfortunately, with Bourne now not being picked to go to the World Cup, it sort of stopped his opportunity to play, if I could say that. So a bit heartbroken for him, because I definitely think he would have added massive value on the field in terms of his bowling. Also Tsepo Ndwandwa, a bit unfortunate for him because Bjorn's also there, so it's kind of tricky to. I mean, you can only pick one spinner most places. Now we're going to Paul, we'll possibly play two. And then Mureki.
Definitely playing two, Dom.
Mureki's been one of the toughest guys to face in the past 2-3 seasons, just in terms of like how consistent he is, and he just doesn't let go. Like he has you and you're just stuck. You can't score. So good to have him on this side of the of the boundary. Looking forward to sort of how his season also sort of unfolds. I'm sure you'll have a bit of a point to prove in the 4-day stuff. Who else did we sort of
think Russell's got say he's probably been lucky that he's got selection-wise, that is. I mean, Luther's been injured, and Magala has just came back. You've got Malus, you've got Duan, you've got Vesey, you've got Jones.
So many
There's it's a fantastic side, Dom, and especially in your bowling options, like we said, you've got Bjorn, who's been ever present, and now you've got two younger leg spinners, exciting leg spinners, and of course Ndwandwa. But just going back to the One Day Cup now, where at the moment, things have not gone how you would have liked. But like any Lions side, I mean, like I always say to Pila as well, people are always watching. So I'm pretty sure that you still have some sort of plan to maybe even sneak into the playoffs. What is the Lions looking to do in the next 3 games that are left? You're currently sitting 7th with 2 points. and Western Province are number 1 at 16. Warriors have just had 2 back-to-back wins against the Highveld sides, 2 fantastic wins. What is the plan for the Lions in the next 3 games?
It's a monumentous task to get through, because I think first and foremost, before this game, I think P-Dog said we needed 4 wins with 3 bonus points, and that would like almost guarantee us getting into the final. I think that's now gone down drastically, because now we're very reliant on how other teams go.
Yeah.
So essentially, we need Western Province to run away with it, and we need basically whoever's in 2, 3, and 4, like no one else to get as close to Western Province as they can. So we need the Warriors to like lose the next 3 games, I think, because if they win 1 game, I think we're out of contention then completely. So it's too dependent actually on
so many
permutations,
variables,
unfortunately. But essentially, we've just got to try to get back to our winning ways. I mean, first and foremost, win, and then we can't. Certain things are out of our control. Like, I mean, we had a massive opportunity the other day to get on a roll and get on a run like that. But yeah, we didn't quite get it over the line. So yeah, there's nothing more we can do but make sure we win our next 3 games. So we've got the Rocks on Saturday, then we've got Northwest in Potch the following Friday, and then the Titans at home the following Sunday.
Do you get to a point where you possibly write off a 50 over season?
Well, you can't do that anymore.
Relegation,
because
promotion,
relegation and promotion. So I mean, we never want to. I never like to think that we'd ever be thinking about worrying about relegation. But it is a reality these days, and especially with us not starting so well, we don't wanna just write it off and give
momentum as well.
Momentum to other teams and sort of just play like we don't really care. There's always pride on the line, number 1, and then number 2, it's always at the back of your mind. We've got to win games. I mean, the sooner we get into that winning habit again, I think the sooner we'll be back to our best again. I think just sport is all about confidence, and if your confidence is a bit shot, jeepers, you've seen other teams in the world, like some of the best teams in the world, not being able to perform when they're not confident.
Just on that relegation point, I mean, it's tough now because every competition has a weight that it carries towards that promotion relegation battle. Is it a good thing? Is it a healthy thing that promotes players to actually take care of a season? Like you're saying now, you can't just write off a 50 over campaign given the fact that you haven't started well. You got to really try and finish it off well and put yourselves in some sort of contention of either making a final or finishing within the top 4. Is it a good thing to have a promotion relegation?
I definitely think so. It's always gonna keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get, like you say, very complacent and write off a campaign, but there's always something to play for now at the end of the day. I mean, there's a team, the Knights got relegated, and they 5 out of 5 now, 4 out of 4 so far. They look like they're playing some really good cricket at the moment. So yeah, you can't take anything for granted anymore. And again, it's promoting good cricket around the country, I think. I would say in an ideal world, you'd actually ideally only want promotion relegation for your 4-day competition. Because like you look at the England model, promotion relegation for 4-day cricket, and then everybody plays everybody in the white and the T20 stuff. But unfortunately, with regards to the budget constraints and the financial situation, you can't really afford to do that right now. But hopefully in the future we can get to a point where we could do that, because I definitely think it'll give a lot of Division 2 players or cricketers, like we saw in the T20 bubble in Kimberley, where like a lot of those
America.
Exactly, where those sort of players actually get an opportunity to show what they are capable of and show how good their skill set is. Because I mean, you'd miss a player like that or a few other players to see how actually good they are, because they've never given an opportunity at Division 1 level, so it's almost like they sort of written off.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially white ball cricket. You can even go divided by the East and West, 2 groups or whatever
you
that
could even
works.
just
Or
play
3.
Everybody plays everybody once, pretty much.
Or everyone plays once.
Or you have 10 games or 12 games, and then whoever's at the top 4, they go to the semis.
And not only does that help, like you're saying, expose those guys to a higher level, you're developing South African cricket altogether, because now you're playing against the Lions. There's that thing, okay, we haven't had this chance as Mpumalanga to play the Lions. Now you're playing the Lions, and naturally guys would step up.
Yeah.
Because it's that thing of, can we beat one of the better sides
Yeah.
at the top? And like I said, at the end of the day, South African cricket
Raises the standard.
is being raised, and of course, like Dom said, some of the guys that you might miss along the way get that opportunity, and then all of a sudden, gee, there's a cricketer there.
Yeah.
Dom, for me, I'll say in the next couple of years, let's say when you retire,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you look forward to reflecting on to have achieved?
Well, first and foremost, hopefully I would have had an international cap
Yeah.
by then. So that's definitely a massive driving force in the next couple of seasons to try and get that right. And then a big thing is just, like, obviously you always want to score runs and you always want to do well. But I think the big thing for me is, number one, the memories that I've had with my teammates. So how many trophies did we win? Like, how many times we were in the trenches and we turned it around? So like that 2 seasons ago where we weren't batting well, we somehow still made it to the final of One Day Cup and won. Those are sort of things that I'll definitely hold dear to my heart. And then just the relationships. I mean, I can already see there's going to be a handful of guys, whether they like it or not, they're going to see me off the cricket. And it might just be on the golf course, but we've got really close like that. So just having those friendships for the rest of my life, really. Those are the sort of things that I'm sort of looking forward to the most. I mean, you'll always remember the runs you score and the hundreds and all those things, but at the end of the day, the game is actually about people.
Yeah.
And I'm a massive thing for having good people or enjoying good company.
We're far away from even thinking about retirement, so let's park that there. But if I mean, what does life look like for Dominic Hendricks after cricket? Is it coaching? Is it maybe stepping into the media space? Is it running a business? Is it, I don't know,
All the
wearing wearing a suit and being an executive somewhere?
Well, I don't think. Well, first and foremost, I don't think executive is my personality type. Like I did that when I was 19. I worked a 9-to-5 job and I flippin' hated it for the life of me. So already at 19, I was like, "Yep, that's not happening." So me, a big thing is I need to be around people because I'm a massive people's person. So any job that entails that, it's most likely looking towards coaching at this point in time because I really love seeing growth and development in players. So yeah, I'm massive for like development. So yeah, coaching space, potentially a batting consultant or batting coach. Ironically, I am running a business at the moment, but it's a little bit harder to run during cricket season. But it is in the coaching space too. And then maybe there's a job out there for some media work in the potential future. So yeah, we can cross that bridge if those opportunities do arise.
We're setting you up nicely here, Tom. You can't say we never did anything for you.
Fair point. I am an opportunist though, so if those opportunities do arise, I have to
fantastic.
throw it out there.
Fantastic. Nons, anything from your side?
No, I'm good, mate.
You good?
Let's go
Lunga?
and win on Saturday.
Yeah,
definitely.
please just try and get a win on Saturday. Thanks a lot, Tom. Really appreciate your time. I know we've tried to get you on here for a number of weeks now, so really appreciate you sparing a couple of minutes for us and really just giving us an insight, because I think a lot of people don't understand what happens in domestic cricket and what it entails being a professional cricketer in South Africa. It's a hard gig. It's not something that people can look at and see from a deeper level. It's always surface level, and how it's always Dom Hendricks is not scoring runs, and that's all we see.
You don't see the why.
Yeah, you don't see the why and what's behind that, and what influences that. So yeah, really, really appreciate your time, and I hope a lot of people will try and find some good value from what you've said today.
No, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Domzan.
And that's it.
Yes, we missed a moment.
What?
He's Kawaja. They call him Kawaja. But that's my fault.
I understand why they would call him Kawaja,
No,
but I don't know the
what-
full reason.
When did it first happen, Dom? When they started calling you Kawaja?
Granicles.
Oh, okay.
Using Granicles. When I was
okay.
using Granicles.
Also
back then.
lefty there.
Also
And
left
left
hand.
hand.
He's not gonna let you get that wicket.
Yeah, no.
Baron
This
fella.
is
Baron.
physical semblance to a Kawaja as well.
He's about
Height.
a
Okay,
meter and a
well,
half
but
taller.
yes. Okay, all right. Okay, thanks, Kawaja. Thanks a lot, guys, and I hope you really enjoyed that episode. So please, watch, subscribe, comment. Let us know who you would like us to have on the show the next time. Everybody hates Manchester United. Well done to Arsenal. Well done to Chelsea.
Well done to Pirates.
Well done to Pirates.
Not so much to Max Verstappen, but anyways, that's not personal.
No, we don't go to Max Verstappen. So thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, share as much as you can, and of course comment. And we'll see you next time.